Hey everyone, it's Eric over here for Urban Creative. How are my fellow urban creatives doing? Hey, it's the last day of 2025 and I just figured, since I just started this YouTube channel earlier this year, this is a good time to just do a little bit of a wrap up of how my year went for 2025 and, what has progressed with video production, what are the trends that I see coming, and just like, basically some projects that I would love to talk about that I worked on this year that I'm pretty proud about. And yeah, and goals for 2026. It is hours away at this point. And yeah, we'll just talk about how this year's going and how next year's going. And let's just get into it. So let's just talk about some of the projects that I've been pretty proud about that I worked on this year. So if you guys didn't know, I have dabbled into the documentary scene actually the year before, but the cool thing about this year was I was able to do a part 2 of the first documentary that was the Lost Jews of Pakistan, and then this documentary with the same family, they went back to Pakistan and restored this Hindu temple, which really the Hindu population there in Pakistan is a small minority of it. So it was a really cool project to be a part of. The family that I work with, they're just wonderful. So I think the documentary, how we shot it, we were able to get more B-roll and just more of a storyline behind it. So I'll do a little screenshot over here of how that went, just a small clip. And I'll put a link down below that you can check that out there. So, and that was pretty cool. But even more so that I'm looking forward to early 2026, which will officially premiere, is that I did a full-length documentary that's about an hour long. And again, it is under wraps, so I can't talk too much about it, but I will say that I just learned a lot doing a longer form documentary style and how to put that together from, really shooting the video in one day and then putting it together from a storyline perspective to really tell the story of another family and an artistic family that I'll be able to really show you how that turned out. So I'm looking forward to that, and there will be more news about that coming soon. Let's talk about the places that I actually shot this year that was like really interesting. And being in New York City, when you get clients that want to go to different places or landmarks, it's just exciting when you show up and you see these places in movies and you're just like, whoa, I'm actually here in person now. That's really pretty cool, So I shot at the NASDAQ this year, the New York Stock Exchange, and even the United Nations, which that place is just like huge. And it's just really cool to see the history of how like all these countries come together in congregation and have these meetings and stuff. So that was really special. And then I even ended the year over at the Harvard Club, which I just premiered the video that I edited for that. And man, that was pretty interesting because it was just like a room of 100 or so more people, and all these people are very successful. I would say, we had the celebrities there. Flo Rida showed up, but he didn't perform. He was just hanging out. And it was definitely a lot of government officials and just like people that have been entrepreneurs and own these tech startups or any up and coming business that really probably just went public on, the New York Stock Exchange. And it was just a very cool, warm experience. And just being around like that energy of other successful people, business owners, entrepreneurs. It just motivates me more for 2026 that, I want to be around this crowd a lot more and actually just being a part of that and, knowing that you can have great conversations with these people. Like that's kind of what it is like you got to surround yourself around successful people and you will garner that success as well with your business. Speaking of that Harvard Club, let's talk about the clients because really that goes hand in hand with, one of the main clients that I have right now that got me into the event for that is a PR firm. And that was a unique client that I was introduced earlier in the year this year. And they really do a good job of doing PR for, companies that are going public. It's called New to the Street and you can look them up. I think they're number 2 as far as like, media exposure and, viewership and ratings. And I think just on top of them is like Wall Street Journal or one of those main ones. But basically, I work with the main guy there. His name is Vince Caruso, and he's a great, mentor and friend of mine that like we've been doing like some really awesome projects together, going to different events. It's just a really good idea. Like I think as far as a videographer is find a way that you can get tied into some type of PR company because, PR is like a really big thing where they are always holding events. They're always having different clientele and client bases that your network can really expand. And I just think that's a really good idea to get tied in with them. It was like one of my goals this year to kind of get tied into like a PR firm and work with them on a project to project basis. But really, I didn't expect it to be this high of level of people that like I'm networking with. So that's definitely been a blessing that I've been happy about. And yeah, I just had a lot of different ranges of clients, even, another business owner that is he owns his own welding academy, and I've been doing some of his YouTube videos, and I just thought that was like an interesting type of client because I didn't expect how to shoot some of the stuff because welding involves a lot of high heat, sparks and like flames. So it was just interesting for me because I was able to figure out how to shoot better with some of my long lenses and utilize those more than I normally do with other projects that I'm on. But yeah, it's a really interesting client that I have. And then there was also another client that I had the year before, and we still were doing projects kind of earlier in the year, but really they premiered their training series was US rowing. And I was really happy to be a part of that project. And, the great thing about that was kind of one of my main clients that I just continued to do video shoots in the East Coast region and traveled for it. And we just were able to produce a 6-part episode of their training series for, US rowing that, the boat clubs that are across America can use that as a gold standard to learn about safety. And it was just like, yeah, it was a very big ongoing project when it comes to editing and working with the producer over there. Shout out to Margot. She is awesome. So what did I learn this year for 2025 as far as it goes with the videography? I learned how to do drone. So I've been shooting some videos and projects I've done. And one of them that was like I traveled for was over in Pennsylvania for this party supply company that had this huge warehouse. And I was like literally flying the drone outside. But the tricky part was is actually doing it inside and you're not trying to crash into anything. So, drone is like a really good, especially nowadays, there's so much of an upsell that you can use with the drone in a sense when I present my packages to clients that I'm able to say that I can do drone videography as well. And those shots look really great when you kind of put it together with all your other, camera angles that you're doing. So I definitely think that is a good idea to learn how to fly a drone and learn how to use it with videography or even photography as well. Speaking of photography, that was one of those that I stumbled upon where, I used to do photography a little bit with my previous like full-time jobs working in the fashion industry. I never assumed that I was kind of an expert at it and I always left it to the experts when I started doing videography. But what I ended up realizing, and this I think is kind of a going trend, is that, a lot of these companies that have events, sometimes they're on like a smaller budget where they can really only hire one person. And, they can't hire a videographer and a photographer. But if you know how to do both, you can be able to upsell the photography and use that as like an added thing that you can put in as far as your budget and, generate some more income that way. So what ended up happening was is I ended up having a company come to me earlier this year that wanted event videography, and they just asked me like, "Hey, can you do photography as well?" So what I did is I just let them know like, "Hey, I'm a videographer first, but I also do photography and, I'm decent at it, but just know that I'm not an expert." So I would just show them some of the photos that I've done on events, and I even just screenshots of the videography itself if you had a good shot of it or a thumbnail. And it's just like a good idea to just present. I think a lot of times videographers get in their head that they can't shoot both at the same time, but it's easy to do. And I really just try to tell the client that my focus is always going to be on the footage, but when I get time, I will snap in photos where I can, just to get an overall good batch of photos for the event that they can use for their social media. Because a lot of times I think like companies just want to have both, where they can share some stuff on LinkedIn as photos and then the videos more for YouTube and Instagram. So, I definitely think you guys should lean into that, just as a pro tip. And another thing that I learned through some online classes was, learning about staging a little bit more. As you can see here, I'm actually shooting not at the normal Chris Dax studio. I'm over here in Ohio, in Franklinton, with the house that me and my brothers own and that we do an Airbnb on. So I'm just here for New Year's Eve, and I figured, you know what? I think I can find a way to stage this up pretty well. So, a big thing and a pro tip is, don't always focus on doing the lighting that should be on the subject. You really got to dress up your staging. So as you can see, I got a couple good little small lights in the background. And, I'm just testing different things that, really make sure that you don't forget about your background and how to stage that. So there's a way. I'll have a separate video at some point to do a little bit more deep dive on staging, but I definitely learned and got my skills a lot better with that. So some of the personal goals that I had for 2025 that was pretty cool is actually starting this channel. It's been an interesting ride with doing this YouTube stuff. And, I think it's one of those things where I have ran into the same thing that I think everyone does, is trying to keep that consistency going, where you're posting on, once a week basis, or, really trying to get long form videos, but also shorts out of it. And it has been a process. It has been challenging. And I would say I'm not doing the best at it, but I will try to continue with 2026, is to do more consistency, think about more ways to make it fun, and, just touch on topics that I think people will gravitate towards, not only just for videography, but just from like a personal, coaching, I guess you can say, standpoint, or entrepreneurial standpoint. And, really just trying to show there is a way to be creative and also be successful in an industry that that you can give value, and that people really need your skill, So be on the lookout for that. I will say that I do want to do more of these live videos. I think what I enjoyed the most was actually doing live videos where, I had some fun when I was traveling over into Thailand, and we went to Bali. So I did, a Bali like live, talking about, the feeling that it was to be there, where obviously that's the oasis for freelancers or remote workers, you can say. And it was just interesting to do it there. And actually covering the Diddy trial was really interesting, going there multiple times to do live. And, I actually got like my most engagement from the live videos. So I will be doing some more of those. I'll think about how to get more creative with it. And, we'll just kind of see how it goes. But speaking of Diddy, I know you guys watched that 50 Cent, docu-series on Netflix at this point. I actually just watched it. And one of the things I will say that was interesting is that, the footage that they were able to get that was right before he got arrested, that Diddy didn't pay his videographer that he hired, and the videographer was able to use that footage because he owns that footage, and it went into 50 Cent's hand and he knew what to do with it. So I just think that's pretty interesting that, hey, when you contact these freelancers like me, and, you're stalling on payments and you think that you shouldn't be paying them, just know that we own the footage, and just, do right by people, and they will do right by you, So just an interesting thought I had about that. And also, of course, one of the biggest goals that I accomplished this year that I was really excited about was officially publishing my first book, Ralph to the Rescue. On my birthday, it went live, which was pretty cool. It was just like special to me. And, this book, it has been an interesting ride too, as far as like getting it published, putting it on Amazon, and just getting different feedback from everyone as far as like how much the story really touched them, and how how it made them laugh and it made them cry. And, even my other family members or like my niece learning more about my family reading it. And actually, over the holiday season, which was really cool, I ended up meeting with the mayor of my hometown, Fremont, Ohio, Mr. Mayor Danny Sanchez, which is a childhood friend of mine. We've been close for a long time. And, we have a lot of history between us and really between our families. And I was able to give him my first signed copy to him and be able to talk more business and more ideas that we have beyond the book, of course, but some things coming up in the future that I'm looking forward to collaborate with him and his administration and doing more things that are going to be beneficial for the city of my hometown, Fremont, Ohio. So if you guys haven't had a chance to pick up the book, it would be great if you picked it up and, shared it with a family member that loves stories like this, a feel-good family story. And just as goals for 2026, just so everyone knows, is that I haven't been promoting it as hard as I could this year, 2025, because I realized my book editor that was supposed to format the book and, check for, grammatical errors and everything like that, they didn't do the best job. So I ordered them on Fiverr and, I won't oust them out, but I guess at the end of the day, I have to come through this and revise it myself. So I finished a book a couple months ago, so I'm about halfway into formatting the book the right way, a little bit better. So version 2 will be coming soon in early 2026. So from there, once I do that, I'll make an announcement and let everyone know that there is a revised one, maybe a few little more tidbits or stories that I can elaborate on. But version 2 will happen and I'll be able to promote this a lot better. And trust me, this is just the beginning. And, when you have a project that's personal like this, just putting it out there into the universe, it is going to be something that people can, relate to, and people are going to be like excited about it. And just, be happy that you are able to come up with this because, it's not hard to put yourself out there or, your history or whatever like that. But I will say this, anyone that is thinking about doing a book or writing a short story or even a script, just go for it. Just put it out there. I know you guys probably noticed the shirt I'm wearing. Yes, it's a bunch of tongues pattern, but it's actually Rolling Stones. It's my dad's favorite band, so I'm just doing a little ode to him because his birthday was on Christmas, and I always think about him during this holiday season. And guess what? I can't get no satisfaction, so we just got to keep going for 2026, you know what I mean, and see how far we can take it. So let's wrap this video up for 2026. What I would say, my advice to creatives, keep on pushing your creativity, keep on learning. I think one of the biggest things that makes it successful for me is that being a creative, whether you're in photography or videography or you're a graphic designer or your web design, the key to probably more success for you is, yes, be really good at that niche, that specialty you have, but it's also good to upsell, things that I talked about before where you have to always learn, you have to always learn new skills when it comes to being creative. Like I said, I didn't do that much photography in 2024, but then I started doing photography and realized like, hey, I'm pretty decent at this. I can make this work, So I would just say continue to do that. And, it's one of those things too, is like, it doesn't mean that it always has to be something creative. And that just comes from another way of saying that if you're a small business owner or, work on your own as a freelancer full time, you have to have other avenues to generate income. Right here, I'm at my Airbnb that me and my brothers own that generates extra passive income. Work with my other brothers' businesses that they own that I'll talk about at another time, but because it's a long story. But I also do some, side hustle work for them as well. When you're an entrepreneur or hustler, you got to know how to do 5 things, not just one thing. So that's just my overall advice when it comes to 2026. Because with the rise of AI and you just don't know where the market will go or if your job's going to be stable enough, you're always going to have a side hustle. You always need one. Trust me on that. And what's coming for the future for videography or even like my business, I'll kind of tie that into one and I hope you guys get something out of it is that, I just think the future is bright. We can, find ways to utilize AI more and more with videography and utilize different skills like drones or photography or even just learning new programs like DaVinci Resolve compared to Adobe. Like you can just figure out ways that you can earn that extra additional income. So I think the more diversified you are with videography, the more you can keep learning, the better. I do think the industry is leaning towards, having versatility where photo and video, but you also can tell a story. And I think storytelling is going to be big for 2026. Trust me on that I think, yes, AI is here, but it's so AI slop and the Sora 2s and like all these goofy videos that are coming around. Like people are rejecting these type of ads that are coming out. And you can look at some of the stats where, Coca-Cola tried to do a commercial totally in AI and they just got a huge backlash. So really like storytelling is going to be important. I think documentary work and documentary series are going to be more of a trend than even the most CGI, high budget, series. When you think about it, back to the Diddy documentary that 50 Cent made, little promotion that he did. All he did was pretty much talk shit on social media. And then you have Stranger Things 5, the final season, and they're putting up billboards, spending all this money on marketing because they obviously want it to be a success, and it is a success. But guess what ended up beating Stranger Things in the ratings? It was documentary, and it was a good story, and it was compelling, it was riveting. So if I was a videographer just starting off or, want to pivot myself, I would say start leaning more into the documentary work. Figure out a story from your hometown that might be so interesting that you want to tell it. So that's what I'm leaning towards myself is I'm trying to get more into, storytelling longer form with the documentary kind of style and just, go off of that. I'm always going to do corporate work and everything and corporate events or music videos. I love that. And, wherever it really takes me. But yeah, I just see myself and a lot of other videographers making a lot of success off of documentary work. So that wraps it up for 2025. I hope you guys got something out of this, even though these are personal stories of myself and my business and, a little bit of personal stuff. I hope you guys get something out of it for your business or what do you want to launch for 2026 to keep it rolling? So like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free to reach out to me for 2026. Do you got some creative goals that you need help with? Probably do, yeah, and you don't even know where to start. I get it. I was there before as well. So look at the link below. I do have creative consultations that you guys can meet up with me about. Discuss goals that Urban Creative can help you out with. So let's roll out for 2026. I'm excited, guys. Happy New Year. Be safe, and we'll talk soon.